Haman Nature, a journey in search of a peaceful and prosperous society with human nature as a guide. Led by your host, Adam Haman.
Hello there, and welcome to Haman Nature. I am Adam Haman. With me, as always, my good spiky buddy Tyrone. How you doing, man?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. We just finished our live stream for our 100th episode. That was super awesome. Had some champagne, so I'm a little tipsy.
I've never seen an inebriated porcupine. That sounds hilarious.
I know. So we're rolling. We're rolling with a brand new batch of episodes here. So the other day, Trump came out and said something like, he was asked a question, would you pardon Mayor Eric Adams if there was ever, because for people who don't know, Eric Adams is the mayor of New York City. He's come under some pressure lately from his side. He's obviously a Democrat. From his side, because he's sort of not going along with all the immigration stuff, because it's costing New York City a lot of money. There's a lot of crime, things like that. And so now, of course, the fangs are coming out from his own side, looking into his personal life or lawsuits, this or whatever. And so somebody asked Trump, would you pardon Eric Adams? Trump was like, yeah, sure. I think he's a good guy, whatever. I don't know. But it reminded me of an article you recently wrote, maybe a little over a month ago, late last year, about the Daniel Penny situation that happened in New York. And I thought there's that article, yes, it was talking about sort of a current event, current topic. But as we like to do on this show, rather than just react to what's in the moment always, we're trying to give a little bit of a deeper analysis, like how can this particular situation perhaps reflect on the greater society as a whole, or things of that nature. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So Adam, why don't you give us the bare bone, the nuts and bolts of what your article was about, the situation, give in case reader or viewers aren't familiar with it.
Yeah, so people should know, but just in case they don't, Daniel Penny was an ex-Marine who was riding on a subway in New York. And he experienced what I'm sure many New Yorkers on the subway experience a lot of, or way more than you'd think is normal. Some lunatic, homeless, drugged out guy on the car just acting like a psychotic, screaming at people. Let me get the quotes. Demanding things from them, saying, I don't care if I go to jail and I'm ready to die. Just being a real psycho belligerent. And this sort of thing happens a lot, and so what happened is he, being a forthright young man trained as a Marine, and some other people on the train stepped in to try and restrain this guy. There's a famous video where he's got him in a chokehold, sort of like a jiu-jitsu sort of thing. He's on his back, the other guy's on top of him, but he's got a rear naked choke on him, and he's just restraining him, and some other guys are trying to help. And a lot of people think that this man died, by the way, this homeless person. His name was, I have his name. His name was Neely. Very unfortunate. But anyway, a lot of people think this Neely person died on the scene, but that's not true. He died later at the hospital. And there's some talk about maybe he was so scuzzy and awful looking that the responders didn't want to touch him or something like that. I can't confirm or deny. But anyway, this thing happened, and Daniel Penny became all of a sudden famous for what you don't want to be. And I was initially encouraged because the cops interviewed him and released him, because it seemed like, this obviously wasn't, any kind of a homicide or anything. But then the DA got involved, these leftist, racist prosecutors, and ended up putting this man on trial for murder. And the deep insight I wanted to talk about in this article is that New York City officials and a lot of left-leaning left-leaning big city prosecutors and DAs are giving us anarcho-tyranny, a thing we talk about a lot on this show, a situation where they will not do anything to keep you as a citizen safe from these lunatics. They just won't do anything. They'll turn a blind eye. That is not something that they feel like they need to do a thing about, to the point where if you walk down the street, it's just normal that you're going to be accosted by psychos, by drugged out homeless psychos, these living zombies, these poor wretches. The government will not help you with that at all. But if you do anything to defend yourself, the full force and weight of the law is going to come down on you like a hammer. And that's what happened with this Daniel Penny guy. And when I was writing the article, I was relieved. It was a little bright glimmer of sunshine, because I would have lost money on an even bet that he would have been found guilty by jurors in New York City. But that is not what happened. He was acquitted, and I was delighted, so I wrote about it.
Yeah, let me point out that this is actually the second article you've written on this topic. And so I would encourage folks to meander their way on over to hamannature.com, where you'll find our Substack page and all of these articles. This one is the second in your series. This one was called "A Small Glimmer of Hope for NYC Discovered in the Fate of a Penny." And in that article, you have a link to the one you wrote back in March, when sort of the first came out. The key phrase, and this one gets glossed over all the time, and in fact, it's so glossed over, you might have thought, if all you watch is CNN or Fox News or something, you might have thought that Daniel Penny was the only person involved in the
Yeah.
restraining of this individual on the subway. But you yourself sort of skimmed over it. You said Daniel Penny and others held this guy down. It's always the "and other." Nobody focuses on it. Well, why don't they focus on the others, Adam,
That's a good
that
point.
were there?
Because it's not a black versus white issue. There were prominent, heavily involved black people involved in trying to restrain this lunatic.
I think
But
there was a Hispanic gentleman
I
involved
think so too.
as
Yeah.
well. So Daniel
But you
Penny
would not.
happens to be the white guy that had him in the hold, the chokehold, I guess. Right? It was some sort of chokehold. I'm not
Yeah,
a
it was a rear naked
military
choke,
person or none of
and
that
there's a
stuff.
debate about whether it was an air choke or a blood choke
I
or
don't know
whatever.
what the hell that
I don't
means,
know what
but
the difference is. But look, the race thing. y- The prosecutor over and over and over made this nothing about race. You'd think that these individuals didn't even have names, because it was just the white man did X, and then the black man did Y. Black man, white man. It was just the most racist thing you've ever seen. And to frame it that way, when what's actually happening is homeless psychopaths are terrorizing the citizens who pay your salary,
right.
and you are on the side of the homeless psychopaths. That's just such an inversion of justice that it just makes me horrified for our society.
Right. I think the reason why he was acquitted is because the regular jurors are regular New Yorkers who
Yeah.
have to go on the subway, and they have probably been accosted and dealt with this, and they've probably secretly said to themselves, "Boy, I wish somebody would just do
Somebody would do
about
something.
this."
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, they may pull the lever over and over and over again for Democrat, 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 or whatever politician. I wouldn't care if it was a Republican, whatever. That sort of, in a way, promotes these, tolerates these policies where you can have sort of this chaos, as you said, sort of
Yeah.
anarcho-tyranny in the system. And people can be pushed so far, and they will toe the line. And again, these people that ride the same jurors that acquitted him probably all voted for Democrats, and they probably all will again. But when push comes to shove, in this case, literally, you take it out of the realm of politics and put it into the realm of just one person on the subway, and you
Yeah.
say that could have been me.
Yeah.
Um,
I
people are fed up with it, I hope.
I feel like a bit of a dweeb for quoting myself, but I don't find I don't have a better way to say what I think about this. So I wrote near the end of this little article. So, given how wretched the government of New York City has been for a long, long time, I was sure Daniel Penny was going to jail for following one of the most noble of virtues, defending the innocent from the violent and insane. But I was proven wrong, and thank God for it. The jurors looked past the racist framing of the New York City prosecutors and instead found Penny not guilty on all counts and released him. I am very relieved. If it had gone the other way, our society would continue to get sicker and violent criminals would continue to be emboldened. After all, what fool would try to step in and do the right thing if they know they'll be punished for their trouble? That that thing where the government steps in and causes the normal instinct to protect innocent people from malevolent people to try and step in and pervert that or turn that switch off and turn us into just meek little sheep who are able to be predated upon by the the scummiest and weakest of predators. I mean, this is just some homeless guy. It shouldn't be that hard to protect the citizens from these people, but the sort of behavior is just allowed. In fact, it's subsidized. Actually, when you consider all the programs
Mm-hmm.
that are going on to
Yeah.
enable people to live as drugged out homeless people, where they get some services provided by the government. Well, whatever you subsidize, you get more of, right? Isn't that basic economics?
Yeah.
So these big cities are literally spending taxpayer dollars to make the legion of dangers that they have to walk past on a daily basis larger, and then won't step in and protect them when these lunatics run amok. It's perverse.
Yeah, I also don't get everywhere you go now. Everywhere. I mean, this situation is getting out of control. And again, we've had episodes on this where we're trying to take the compassionate approach as much as possible. It's like what has caused all this homelessness and things lately? We think it's just a sign that the economy is on the verge of collapse. That in my personal opinion, one way they're hiding all the inflation is by removing people from the workforce. Um, a homeless person doesn't impact expenditures too much. So you can sort of hide inflation by keeping costs down by having fewer consumers in the marketplace. It's terrible. I know that sounds a little conspiratorial, but I think it's more just the apathy of politicians. Remember, folks, politicians don't care about you. They never have. They only care about getting your vote. That's all they care about. They don't care about making things better or worse as long as they get elected. But what I wanted to perhaps dive into on this one is I had an interesting idea. So you've seen proposals from libertarians to deal with the homeless situation in kind of weird ways, like privatize the top 1 millimeter of every sidewalk in front of a business so that the city still owns the majority of the sidewalk, the utility lines underneath or whatever. But all of a sudden, the top part of the sidewalk is private property, and now you can not. You could say that someone sleeping on the street is a violation, trespassing or something, right? I had one the other day. I was like, why are we seeing? Why are there so many people holding up signs at every street light, every intersection? Begging for money. Many of them, when I look at them, seem quite fit and healthy and young. So I'm like, shouldn't you just go get a job? I don't know, but okay, whatever. Let's say they really are in a dire situation and it's not their fault. Still doesn't mean me as a tax-paying citizen of a city wants to see that or put up with it or feels good about having that in my community. Do you think you could just like run a political campaign saying, my number one issue is to to get rid of this in our cities. Like, we're not going to solve the problem worldwide, but we don't have to live with it here. Let's just designate every street in a construction zone. And then you can't loiter in a construction zone, folks. Do you think I could win office on that platform, Adam?
You might, but it would be just another example of solving one program
Right.
or error of government with another.
Yeah,
You bring up a
it's a
good
bit of a
point.
joke, but yeah.
Yeah, of course. Bring up a good point. Why are these seemingly healthy and productive people begging rather than working? And I'm sure some of it is a psychological problem, some of it is a drug use problem. But we have a pretty deep lack of meaning where, for one reason or another, people are not going out and flexing their wings and trying to fly, making the most that they can out of their lives in a productive way. And there have got to be a couple hundred different government program reasons or prohibitions for why that could be. Like, one example could be that healthy young person begging on the street corner. Maybe his ability to be productive in the economy happens to not be high enough to pass the threshold of the minimum wage law. What if it's literally illegal to pay him an amount of money that makes sense for the employer? Therefore, he's priced out of, by law, a way to become a productive member of society and earn himself some skills that could be more value and earn a sense of self-respect that could maybe keep a person safe from doing drugs every day and begging. The government, through hundreds of ways, just breaks. It's not breaks. It finds a way to prohibit people getting in the way of them finding purpose and meaning. And yeah, and I assume a bunch of it is soft-hearted morons who don't understand economics, and some of it is cronyism. Like, if you are in a guild, if you're in a labor union, you don't want to be threatened. You don't want your relationship with your employer to be threatened by low cost labor. That's very bad for you. So, hey, let's put up some laws to make sure that I can't be threatened by low cost labor. They have to use me. So, yeah, I think, like, you bring it up an awful lot on this show, and I think you're right. The fact that we have a fiat currency distorts things in destructive ways that makes people lose hope and dignity and fail to find meaning in their lives. And these regulations, like, I'm pointing to the minimum wage law, but there's others. I think that's a big part of it. You gotta wonder what makes a seemingly healthy person decide that drugs and panhandling is the way I want to spend my time.
Let's go back to the emphasis in your article about the Daniel Penny case, about it being race. So there were multiple people involved on that subway that held this gentleman down, who ultimately, unfortunately, died. They were of various ethnic and racial backgrounds, but only the white guy was prosecuted. Now, he was the one, I suppose, who inflicted the most harm, I suppose, but the others should have been charged as well
You
for
could easily imagine them being charged as a conspirator or
as
an accomplice.
accomplice, right? Because I may not have pulled the trigger in the bank robbery, but I drove the car, right? Well, I'm complicit in the crimes that happened there. So it obviously was about race, and again, the way you put it, you noted in your article that the prosecutor referred to Penny as the white guy, the white man, the victim as the black man, right? What's the point of even pointing that out? Like,
Mm-hmm.
well, why are we mentioning race at all?
Mm-hmm.
So what I've heard is there's some people think, I think Tom Luongo has mentioned this on his podcast, but I'm sure many others have mentioned that, that when Marx began his cultural revolution, his economic revolution, whatever, for him it was all about class, economic class,
Yeah.
poor versus rich. There really wasn't a middle class at that time. And then whatever vestiges of capitalism came about, the little pieces that did make it into the economic society, created a middle class for the first time in human history. And so the Marxists realized at that point that, oh, we're not going to get the workers on our side because the workers are now middle class and they're well to do and they've got leisure time and a house and cars and they're
Yeah.
happy. So what can we do? We
And
have to bring about our
they admire their oppressors. They don't hate them. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, maybe one day I'll be a rich capitalist.
Oh, right. Yeah. And so the communists are now like, oh crap, how do we bring about the communist revolution that we want? If we were going to try to pivot the classes against each other, then we figured we had the numbers on our side because there's going to be more in the poor class than the upper class, but the classes are gone. Like nobody in the middle class. Middle class is fine with there being a rich class as long as they're well enough to do, right? So then they're like, well, let's pivot to race. Now, what I've never heard is a good case for like who made that switch. Like, did it happen just organically in the philosophy departments across all universities? Was there some sort of force behind it? Like, but how did it go from economic class as the division to race, which clearly has become the thing, and the left, the Marxists, whomever you want to say is behind this or in favor of this, have really found, I think, their holy grail. This one seems, I think, is the one that's gonna stick. It's really working for them.
Yeah, you make a good point, and people have made the accusation, and I think there's some truth to it, that Marxists pivoted and started a long march through the institutions, I think they called it,
Mm-hmm.
in order to subvert those institutions and make them still class-based, but along identitarian
Right.
lines. And although race is perhaps the most successful of those, they weren't limited to that. They were doing men versus women, gay versus straight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a smorgasbord of identitarian-based ways that you can pit one group of people against another group of people if you're going to make your money on the conflict. If what you're all about is the conflict, which is where you can sow division and try and make some sort of a leftist, power-seeking grab for more government control to solve the oppression of one class versus another class, even if you have to gin that up yourself and tell a bunch of lies. I think it was motivated by just the lust for power, and people use hatred to try to achieve power, and creating a victim and oppressor narrative is the best way to do that.
I think the men versus women one was always doomed to fail. I think they really tried to give that one a shot, and there are some that will just never give up on it. But the reason why that one was never going to work is you're going to ask what, wives to hate their husbands, mothers to
Right.
hate their sons. That
Right.
doesn't make any. You're not going anywhere with
That's
that.
not going to have legs. No.
I think the gay issue worked for a while, but once the Supreme Court decided gay marriage is fine, and really the 90s,
Yeah. More importantly, people stopped caring.
yeah, my
Yeah.
generation is just like, yeah, okay, be gay. I mean, who cares? And now it's in every TV show. So they lost that one, but the race one seems like they. I thought we were kind of over it, to be honest with you. I think 90s, 2000s, man, it all seemed like all that stuff was like, man,
It's fading away.
yeah, it was fading away. It was just like we're all grew up with people in different races. Who cares? What people love Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods and the
you had
Cosby Show. Okay, maybe not the Cosby Show in
Maybe not
hindsight,
that.
but Family tie or not Family tie, Family Matters. These were top shows.
All those things were
and all the
hugely
songs,
all
the
those things were
music.
hugely important, but honestly, they were a result of the seeds planted in the 70s and 80s. Sesame Street was big on just not making kids have these racial hatreds. We were all singing "Free to Be You and Me." There was we were all taught to just not have these weird knee-jerk hatreds for people that are different than us, and that resulted in, because culture drives everything. That resulted in the shows you're talking about in the late 80s and 90s, where it looked like we were starting to just wake up from the racism that's sort of baked into our evolution, where you're just you're just disposed to hate the group of people just like you, but they live on the other side of the hill or whatever, and this tribalism. And I honestly think that as we were just getting to the point where everybody loved Michael Jordan, everybody loved Tiger Woods. It's not a problem. Music, the people who crossing supposed race lines to like the other kind of music was just all over the place. And then I believe people who want evil done in this world seized on race as a way to split us against each other,
But
and then just
how?
started
Like,
yelling that from the rooftop. Well, coming out of institutions, coming out of schools.
yeah, it's
It
like
came out of the universities.
how did this one stick? Like, how were they able to grasp sort of the dying embers and like bring it back to just a roaring fire? It's like it's everywhere now. That's the whole lens of everything.
That's a good question. I mean, you always did have opportunists like Jesse Jackson and people like that, always
Sure.
trying to make every issue some horrible, this country's a racist country. So there's always been some of that, and you'll hear echoes of that in, the halls of Congress and on the presidential campaign trail. But honestly, in the culture, it was going away. I think that stopped because horrible professors started teaching these people these horrible ideas, and those people just
Mm,
started going to work in regular old companies and going into HR
yeah.
departments and making everything just wicked and awful.
At some point, hmm, I am dubious about humans' nature on this one. I
Well,
was
you're
about to
stuck
make
with it, my friend. You're
I,
stuck with it.
I was about to make the statement at eventually the race thing will cease to exist because races will cease to exist. But that's not exactly right. What I mean by that is among the many things I thought I was going to be in college, one of my majors was anthropology. There's something like in the United States, based on the current rate of interracial procreation, that it's something like within 20 generations, so within 400 years, everyone's going to have the same basic skin color in the United States. So it's really not that far away. I mean, you say 400 years, wow, that's forever away, but that's like to the total integration, right? So cut that in half by 200 years from now, which is less time than this country's been around. Everyone will be so mixed genetically speaking that you're not going to really have that white versus black anymore. But I grew up near Washington D.C. Went to a predominantly black high school. It was a very large high school for the time. I think my graduating class was over 500 people, which for back then is a lot. It's still a lot today, I think. But you would have um, my black friends would always like joke around with each other, like, "Oh, you're a light skinned versus a darker skin." Like it was just something like even though quote unquote they were both black, they still kind of see the different shades,
That's
right?
the
So
key.
even
That's
if
the key.
400 years from now we're all quote unquote the same color skin, like that matters, doesn't matter to me, I don't care. um There'll probably still be shades, and then maybe that'll be the new racism. And like, are we ever going to get out of this as human beings, Adam, or are we stuck evolutionary wise? Are we just racists
Yeah,
as a
that's a
species?
that's a great question. I got a couple things to say about that. The first is when I was younger, I sort of thought that we'd screw our way out of this, just like you're saying. Eventually we'll all start having sex with one another until we're all the same color. Well, the analysis you were making about however many 100 years you thought it would be for us to get roughly the same skin tone, that's a straight line comparison that you can't just automatically
Sure,
assume is going to
sure, sure.
project into the
Hmm.
into the future. What if the cultural norms
Right, right,
change
right,
and
right.
people want to have sex with people that are exactly the same shade as
Sure,
them for
sure.
whatever reason? But second of all, you're absolutely right. Until we defeat this as a concept, it's not going to get defeated because
Right.
you'll be getting out the, you know, chromatoscope to try and figure out what percentage different color skin you are.
Right.
It's like the star-bellied sneetches, right? We will
The what?
always the star-bellied sneetches from the famous Dr. Seuss book where
No, no, no.
All right. Well, for people who remember it, the people who had the Sneetches who had a star on their belly, well, they were the good ones. And then,
Okay.
so this guy came along and invented a machine that would take it off, and then they were the good ones. So it ended up with the species just in a never-ending circle, all running in and out of this machine to get a star on their belly or not, because as you point out, we love to notice the differences in one another and hate the
Mm-hmm.
other side. And there
Mm-hmm.
is definitely something that's in our psychology that is buried very deep.
Mm.
But as we just talked about it, it doesn't have to be the way we end up. We were coming
Right.
out of this
Right.
because we have these huge neocortexes that can put a spin a governor on whatever evolutionary tendencies make us want to be racist. We don't have to act that way. I wasn't brought up to be freaking racist, and we don't. If absent these malevolent forces who gain from us hating one another, I think things would even out pretty quickly.
I think so too, and I I think all of this is really a byproduct of our lives being too easy. You
Yeah,
know, I think quote unquote capitalism. I hate using that word because one, we don't live in a capitalist society, everybody, but there's pieces. So we'll call it capitalism has made a very comfortable life. We don't have to worry about running water or heat during the winter or food on the table for the most part, right? The necessities of life are pretty easy to attain these days. So that gives us free time to focus on the other dangers. And you've talked about this before as well. The the point I'm getting at is you can easily imagine racism being destroyed overnight by an alien invasion.
sure.
And what I mean by that is, let's say aliens from another planet come descend and attack Earth and start to enslave us all. They kill, let's say, 99% of the human population and enslave the rest. Well, when you come along and you're one of the humans who's enslaved, and you come along to another human being, you're not going to care what skin color they are. You're going to be like, hey, it's us. We're the only humans left. We gotta band together here. So I really do feel like this is more conceptual, more intellectual than it is actually some sort of biological instinct on our part. I think the biological instinct that's coming out is just, this is different. Different is scary. Attack. Right? That's all your brain's saying. So if you take away the this is different and take away the scary part, it's different but not scary, then all of a sudden, I think that's how you mentally
It
destroy
would be
these
so
things.
funny. I sure hope we never get to put this little experiment to the test, but it'd be hilarious if your vision came true and aliens came, killed almost all of us, and we're banding together to fight against them. And somebody says, "Yeah, we've really got to put aside all our differences and all focus together to get rid of this." As soon as we get rid of these filthy Elbonians, though, they got to go
Right,
first.
right. Can you
And
imagine
then,
surviving an alien invasion and you're like, okay, we got to fight these aliens. Oh, but let's not include the white guys,
no,
or
we can't have that.
the Mexicans. No,
I
no.
feel like our defensive assault force is not diverse enough, and that's a problem. Before
so
uh before we
yeah.
wrap up, Tyrone, I want to emphasize we started this off talking about Daniel Penny, who has a name, and the man who died, the unfortunate, psychotic, dangerous, homeless man who died, was also had a name. It was Jordan Neely. I wanted to get that out there, um, for completeness and compassion. It is a shame that we have a society that, on the margin,
Right.
creates crazy people and violent people and desperate people
Or has
and
nowhere for them to
has
go,
nowhere to
or
go. And it's
yeah,
bad when any of them die. Obviously, we would hope that better things had happened to this person so that he got his life on track and
right.
didn't throw it away. And he had a name. Um, you think that's about covered it, my spiky friend? All right. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on Haman Nature. Please go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/at Haman Nature. Please like and subscribe these videos. Go to our Substack, hamannature.com, forward you there, or just hamannature.substack.com. And please sign up. We'll send you emails and stuff. And there's even a way there for you to become a supporting member and get extra stuff. And we would appreciate that greatly. Say goodbye, Tyrone.
Please subscribe.
Just look at that. Look at that face. How can you say no? All right, ladies and gentlemen. We'll catch you next time on Haman Nature.